same one you caught, I think, Glock. Bomber in the tree there, mate. There's a couple of lures. The branching for you. No, down here. Got a couple of lures here for you. Another one over there, mate.
A couple of them lures just here.
3 of them that long.
3, just here. Is that your dog?
Yeah, it's up the top there.
Yeah, is that your dog?
Hey, no, not my dog.
That'll do, mate. I'll get it. I'll get it, mate.
G'day everyone, if you've got to this point, that means you've just finished watching part 6 of the trip, which was the final segment. So thank you very much for taking the time to stick with us all the way through. Yeah, we had a great time filming and making the video, so hope you enjoyed watching it as well. So today what we're going to do is try and answer some questions people have had since we've got back from the trip. Yeah, and give you a bit of a future insight as to what we're going to be doing on this channel. Yeah, hopefully we'll get to upload more videos of trips we've done and ones that we're going to do as well in the future. So I thought I'd point out that a lot of people have asked, oh, why don't I talk in the videos? I will try and do that in the future, but got to realise that I don't get much time off at the moment. So when I'm on these trips, I've been trying to camp and have fun and haven't worried too much about just talking. It's more about just filming what we're doing at the time. So yeah, hopefully moving forward, if people are liking what we're doing, I'll be able to explain as we go through the trip. Yeah, if you like that sort of thing, so keep that in mind. Before I get started on answering some of your questions, I thought I'd just give you a bit of a background as to why I've started doing this. So I've been canoeing with my granddad and dad for about 15 years. Dad's been doing it for slightly longer than me, and granddad's been doing it for probably 40 years. So he was the one who started us on this, and yeah, I've got to say we've had a lot of fun taking after what he's done. He still comes with us. He's pretty phenomenal, being nearly 80 years old, and he can still come on these trips, which, as you've seen, is pretty rugged terrain, and yeah, he does pretty well to keep going. Also, it's called Cobbers Canoeing Adventures because that was a nickname given to me in high school by a group of mates. So yeah, shout out to you fellas who've called me that for years and years. You've finally made it onto YouTube with that, so thanks for that. We often get asked why canoes. So with a canoe, it allows us to get to those places that you would not be able to get a boat to. Like some of these rivers we're going down, there's big rapids because we're right upstream, and aluminium just wouldn't hold up against these rocks and cope with the constant flogging that these canoes have had. So they're 17-foot Canadian canoes, and they're made out of really tough plastic. The amount of times we've dragged them over boulders and sharp rocks and all that sort of stuff, and they just scuff up a bit on the bottom. So they're really tough, and then also because we like to travel fairly light, we're able to carry our gear around these obstacles a lot easier than if you had an aluminium boat. So yeah, that's a bit about why we use the canoes. Another common question we get asked is, are there crocodiles where we go? And the answer is yes. Generally, where rule of thumb is if you're catching barramundi, there's going to be saltwater crocs there, and we've been to places where there's no barramundi and there's only sooty grunter, jungle perch, those species of fish, and there's big crocs up there as well. So yeah, it's something you always acknowledge. You are taking a risk anytime you enter the waterway in the north, and not just in canoes, like small tinnies. There's numerous attacks on those as well. So just because you're in a boat doesn't always guarantee your safety either. I guess what we feel we do to mitigate risk as best we can is we take canoes that are pretty much 5 meters in length. So, there are a population of crocs that are 5 meters, but they're not as frequent. And the size factor does play a factor in when you're going down these rivers. A lot of time the crocs are wary and they don't want anything to do with you, particularly if there's more than one canoe. So that's the second thing we do to mitigate risk. We always go with at least 2 of these big canoes, often 3, particularly down these bigger rivers, because when they see something that they're not familiar with, or they're thinking what the hell is this coming towards them, they're often not going to want to have a bar of it. So we've been lucky most of the time, and in saying that, it hasn't always worked. We have had one incident that was quite a scary incident, and to be honest, we got lucky, and everything got out of the situation as best it could. Ask the croc and that, but it went to show that you can have a theory and think it's working, but it doesn't always. And anyone in tinnies, people have had the side of their tinny crushed before. So you just got to acknowledge that you're always taking a risk, and just hope your enjoyment of what you're doing outweighs what your fear of is under the water. Just also adding to that, probably the most important factor into mitigating the risk we have is going at a time of year when it's not hot. So between October and April, generally crocs are far more aggressive that time of year because coming into the mating season, they're fighting for territory and females. So your chances of having a serious run-in with them goes up exponentially. So we found that generally we've been okay majority of the time because we've gone when it's cold. The crocs are out in the bank because the water temperature is cool and they're trying to get warm, and they haven't got the same level of energy as they do when it's really stifling. So that's something we do also in lowering our chances of having a serious run-in with one. But in saying that, doesn't guarantee you either. Just pointing that out. So as you saw from the video, there was an incident where I managed to get a lure trouble in my finger. Yeah, that was one of the more painful experiences I've had in my life. So what happened was, had that little barra that I caught, and up the front of the canoe there, it can be a bit hectic with them sometimes. They're flicking around like crazy. So that's all right when they're doing that, because you can sort of avoid them, but then they stop and they stay still. And then you think that's your opportunity to go in and try and remove the hook. So normally I have lip grips. Got me beat where they went prior to the trip, so sort of went without them. I had pliers and a small scoop net, which I didn't always use. So yeah, the fish was there, and it stopped flicking, so I went to go towards it so I could get the hook out of him, and it was probably still 40 centimeters away from my hand when he flicked, and yeah, the treble went straight in my index finger on my left side, and barb went in all the way. So yeah, obviously there was a bit of swearing there, but not nearly as much as there was, because I've cut quite a bit of that out. So yeah, it was just F. You didn't all need to see that. And then in terms of when we had to try and get the hook out, again, it was just bad language, so we didn't film it. But yeah, it took a good hour and a quarter to feed that hook through, because once the barb goes through on, especially a 6X type treble, yeah, it's not coming back out the same way it went in. So you got to try and feed it through the flesh, and yeah, had to sort of try and, it went straight in, so then I had to try and get it so it came out the side of the finger. And it got to a point there where it wasn't going any further, because the curve in the treble was preventing it from being fed through further. So Cole had to get the pliers and grab the end of the hook that was sticking out, and then pull and roll with it. So yeah, it was not fun for me, and wasn't fun for Dad and Cole either, because as you saw, we're out in some remote area. So it's not like you can just go down to the hospital and get it pulled out by a medical professional. You got to do it yourself out there. And thankfully, like, once it did come out, I just dad-oiled it a few times at night, and it went mostly numb, so I wasn't in too much pain with it, and just bandaged it each day to try and keep infection out. So yeah, didn't get infected, which was good, and it's pretty much all healed up now. Most people who've probably had a hook in the finger before will feel some altered sensation, and it was like that for a couple of months. Yeah, it just felt a bit tingly at times and that, but now it seems to be back to normal. So it's a little bit more on that. So yeah, for the trip, as you would have seen, we caught a fair few fish. Predominantly sooty grunner was the most frequently caught one. Plenty of Saratoga as well. I never got a chance to catch Saratoga in the past, so yeah, they were a new experience for me, and yeah, they're a pretty fish. I was surprised how savage their teeth were. The first one, I put my finger in their mouth and quickly learned not to do that. As you saw, there was a few of quite good size. We caught probably more of them than what you saw on camera. Often there's a few times we walked off the river and went and fished some lagoons. Yeah, we caught plenty of them. Missed a couple of barra in those spots, which was a bit frustrating. As for the barra, yeah, we got a fair few of those. In total, we probably got between 40 and 50 fish, and not all of them were of size, but I couldn't get over how many times we lost some good ones. Normally when we stick them on other trips, we've got them in, and then this time they just seem to be experts at throwing the lure, as most people who've caught them before would know about. They just somehow seem to throw it, even if you have often two, three trebles, they somehow get it out. So it's credit to them as a fish. That's why they're often targeted, because they are a challenge. And yeah, when we had them for tea at night time, they're splendid. So yeah, that's why we go for them. We go for the enjoyment of catching these fish in these remote places. In terms of the big one that was lost, again, that was a fair language moment that a lot of you wouldn't see, and it wasn't just me shaking my head. But yeah, he hit the lure and took a big run towards the bank, and there was this hedge-like vegetation that I was often lining the banks in this river, and he just got himself jammed down in there. And as you would have seen on the video, like I would have had him on there, and he'd take a few lunges in there, so he was still on even though it was all tangled up. And yeah, unfortunately the leader failed at a certain point, and he got off. So he would have been easily a 90 centimeter fish. He could have been a meter. And yeah, the setup I was using while I was fighting that fish, it wasn't a light one. So he had a good bit of weight behind him. And so that we got some good ones as well. A couple around 80, nearly 75 centimeter fish. So they're solid, and generally they're the best eating size anyway. So we're pretty happy to get those. But next time we'll do a few things different so we can hopefully land a few more. So in terms of some of the fishing tackle we take on the trips, generally out of the canoe, I've always prioritised the bait cast setups over spin, just because I am more accurate with them. I'm not too bad with spin, but generally when you're going through swift water, you only get 1 or 2 shots at a spot, and you don't want to get hooked up because the engine room's got to turn around against the current, and they often don't like doing that too much. So normally with the casting, I'm pretty good and accurate with the bait cast setup. So on that trip in particular, I took a Corrado 70 on a Shimano Zodius 5'10". That's a great little rod for catching silties and that, but when you hook a bigger fish like a barra or a bigger Saratoga, it's got enough beef to get them in and deal with. Because as you saw, like when you got the fish on and you're going through the fast water, you're trying to fight them away from the snack, so you can't go too light sometimes, otherwise you're just going to lose the fish. The fish is going to swim off with a lure in its mouth, and I don't generally like seeing that happen. I like to at least get it out and get them back in the water, or if we're going to keep them, get them in so you can eat it. And then second setup was Shimano Accents DC. That's a pretty flash reel, that one. It's actually Dad's, so he used it when he wanted to fish, but otherwise I was using it in the meantime. The digital control allows your cast to go a lot further, and it's very smooth, like plenty of bearings in it. And then that was on a St. Croix Premier rod. I think it was 10 to 16 pound or 10 to 17 pounds, something like that. It actually broke about 3/4 way through the trip. So often with using rods in the canoes, because you're carrying your gear over rough areas, and your tips can sometimes take a bit of a beating up the front. Like occasionally we'll break a rod, whether it's compromised from getting a whack, making the blank a bit weaker, or what, or it could just be a general rod failure. It happens at times. So that was the second setup, and then third setup was Calcutta Conquest 300 on a custom samurai blank rod that a local guy used to make from my hometown. So it's a great rod. It's for dealing with bigger fish, and it's tough as. I've had that rod for many years now, and it hasn't looked like breaking. Generally on most of the setups I've got 30 pound Suffix 832, and then on my lighter one I had 20 pound, I think it was. Often I'll put 15 on it, but 20 pound because I knew we'd probably come across a bit bigger fish on this trip. In terms of the lures, often I like my hard body type lures. I had a broken back one that I was doing really well with up in the top section, catching sooties, and then toga a bit through the line, unfortunately, and I lost that one. I was also getting fish on, Bombers, Reedy's B52, Tilson. Generally the Tilson lure in the dark green and light green with silver valleys is my favourite. That's the one I've had the best success on their colour range. And the green B52 with the black stripes. Generally when I go to the tackle shop trying to buy them, they're always the one that's least, there's not as many on the shelf of, so I think other people have success with that as well. After I got the treble in my finger though, I decided to resort to some plastics. I do fish plastics a bit, and will more so now, particularly if I haven't got lip grips or long nose pliers to get the hook out. So the lures there I used were pelagic. As you see, Pelagic Pursuit has his own lures now. They're phenomenal. The Twitch is what they're called, and I wish I had more of those because the amount of bites I was getting was unreal, and they don't hook up on structure, which makes it good. Your hookup rate goes down a bit just because they have the weedless hook system, but saying that, I'll definitely buy plenty more of those in future trips now. Now I know that they're the go. When I ran out of those, I went to the Z-Man diesel minnows in white with a weedless hook. Did well on those. Ran out of those as well, unfortunately. And then I had a few other styles as well that caught fish, but I found those two were the best form of plastics. And generally in white was the best color. It's a good all round color, fresh salt. So yeah, it's probably my favorite, the plastics. As you would have seen, the gear we taking the canoe, we often keep it in barrels. So that just ensures that if we do have a capsize, which does happen every so often, that our gear stays dry, particularly the sleeping gear, technology stuff for my drone and GoPros and that sort of stuff, and then also food that we do take if we don't get any fish. So we put that all in the barrel. That way, if we do tip it, it floats nicely and it doesn't get wet. As you would have seen, there would have been a big blue 50-litre blue esky we took on that trip, so we don't always take it. Like as I said, we like to travel light, but on this one, because we were going for an extended time and because we were going to be catching fish that are generally good to eat, we were able to put them in there and keep them cold. So we hard block freeze a single big block of ice, and that pretty much lasted us the whole trip. We had a little bit at the end, but sometimes it's just about keeping the fish cool. You don't need to freeze it. And yeah, in saying that, at the start of the trip, it was bloody heavy. Carrying around the falls, often we had to take the gear out, march it up to where we were going to head, and then come back and get the canoes later. So yeah, sometimes when that block of ice was getting lighter, it was a bit more manageable to get them canoes up and over logs and all those other obstacles you'll come across. For our paddles, a lot of people in canoe videos use the little single half paddle. They're alright for certain instances, I'm sure, but for what we're doing, we prefer big, long, double-ended paddles. Allows us to get more paddle stroke. You can paddle all day and not feel as fatigued. They're strong, and generally we put yellow blades on them, so if we do tip over, we can find them easily, because if you're up the creek and you got no paddle, it's not going to be too good. So that's a bit about the gear and the canoes that we're currently using. Lastly, I think it's important to say that these trips take a fair bit of planning, and you've got to have reliable people to come pick you up and even take you there, because as you saw, these are remote places we're going some of the time, and luckily we have some good family friends who are able to do these things for us, so thank you very much to you for doing that. We always now take an EPIRB. It's just there for if we get into a really bad situation. We've never had to fire it off, but it's there. And we also now have a Thuraya sat sleeve, which goes on our iPhones, and that allows us to call out and let wives, girlfriends, people who need to know where we are, and kept up to date on how we're going. So that's been a new addition, and we're able to charge that stuff up now with portable power packs and that sort of thing that I use to charge drone batteries and GoPro as well. So yeah, you got to factor in quite a bit. It's one thing to wing it, but you need to be prepared to get yourself out of a situation if you find yourself in one. These are a couple of new things we've had which have made it a bit easier and kept it peace of mind for people who are at home as well. That's pretty much all I was going to go through with everyone today. I hope you've enjoyed hearing a bit more about the trip and what else we try and incorporate into the planning and that of future trips and ones we've done in the past. The next segment of videos I'm going to upload is from a trip we did back a few years ago. It's a pretty spectacular countryside, very rugged terrain, mountainous sort of landscape in a gorge, we're catching fish. Unfortunately, there's a segment of GoPro footage that didn't come out because of the SD card, so we're a bit bummed out about that, because it was probably the hardest physical day of work I've ever had to do. Just the amount of carrying around these big rapids that, yeah, we definitely didn't think about going down, because, yeah, you probably would have you either got seriously injured or probably would have died. So yeah, we got that coming up. Yeah, so good drone footage, and hopefully, yeah, you'll enjoy watching that. And also, because it's called Cobber's Canoeing Adventures, what we do is unique, but in saying that, it's not just about canoeing. There'll be times where we go out the boat fishing offshore, or down the river in the tinny. We'll do videos like that as well. So it won't be just canoeing, but because it's something we do that not too many other people do that I'm aware of, yeah, we thought we'd just lead with that. Otherwise, yeah, take care, and hope you enjoy what's to come. Thanks, guys.